God, I nearly ripped a nail off. Oh, now just
beautiful, mate. Beautiful. How are you?
Worth it. I was better until I really just hurt my fingernail and poured a beer down me. But other than that, I'm doing great.
I'm doing good, mate. I'm doing good. What's the bevy situation this week? What you drinking?
The same as last time. Bright Victoria
Very
lager.
nice. Very nice. I got a Burley Brewing Pale Ale with hints of gin botanicals. So not a sour this week. So you might even like this one. Yeah,
Good
it's
to
pretty
hear.
nice.
Actually, literally 30 minutes before this episode's being recorded, I was at the Hornsby Brewery on the way home from a hike, and I had the IPA of my life.
That sounds good. Did you write down what it's called?
It was fantastic. It'll be in the show notes, which is code for I
good.
Did not.
Well, let me know. I do like a cheeky IPA, but mate, we have so much on the cards today, so let's.
I know. It's
let's
crazy.
dive straight in. Look, before we do, thanks everybody listening. If you are enjoying the show, share it with a friend. Subscribe if you're on a platform that makes sense on. Leave a review if you're on a platform that makes sense on. But look, first and foremost, just thanks for being here. It's a lot of fun doing this every week that our recording doesn't fuck up. And yeah.
It's crazy. We've been doing this for 32 weeks, and because this is episode 32, we're coming up to our year anniversary. And what's crazy to me is I just can't imagine talking about this news segment and the Dealbook segment and the paper segment that we're about to talk through in this episode a year ago. I reckon we would have struggled to get 10% of content like this a year ago.
100%. There's so much stuff going on, and I do like these sections. But give us some feedback, folks, if you're also enjoying the format. We're trying to blend a little bit of what's happening this week with a little bit of timeless knowledge. So keen to hear what people think. But man, should we jump straight into the news?
Let's do it. Let's jump into the news. So we're going to start off with the Getty suing Getty Images suing Stability case that we've brought up last time that we talked about this. But there's just a little bit more detail now, and the other movement in this space is that they're now suing them in the US as well. And I wanted to bring it up just A, because we've talked about it and keep that story going, but B, I wanted to talk about kind of just highlight a few of the things that have come out in this in the actual documentation from the case. Getty is claiming that Stability has copied, and I say copied, more than 12 million images with captions, metadata, and they've also removed the famous Getty Images trademark. The famous. Stability could be in a bit of trouble here as well, because as I was looking at this, I came across a tool at the same time called Stability Attribution, which basically takes the image that was created by some AI and then tries to attribute it to the various images across the web that we use to inform that creation, which is a super cool bit of engineering and work in my view, which it's basically unbundling the diffusion that Stability does to create the AI generated pieces. So this is kind of like a two-part story. One is that Stability could be in a bit of trouble here. Getty's going pretty hard. They've upped the ante. And the second thing as well is it looks like there's very much the ability out there to untangle the diffusion models and be able to attribute it back to what was originally used. So those two factors combined makes me think that there could be some movement in this legal space.
Yeah, definitely. And, I think, obviously famous trademarks is legalese. But if you read, which I'm sure you did, the court proceeding, some of the images do have what looks very suspiciously like a Getty Images watermark on them. So it's... Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's the minority, but the fact is that when a stability image, a stable diffusion image includes a kind of blurred, wonky version of the Getty trademark, it's probably not looking great for them.
Yeah, definitely. And it might be one of those funny things where they can win their overall case based on some weird thing like this. I think we've even talked about this on the show before, but how, old Game Boy games used to have a section of code that made it show the Nintendo logo as part of, and otherwise the game wouldn't boot. And they did that because if you displayed the Nintendo logo and you hadn't licensed the copyright, Nintendo could sue you into the ground. And that was their protection against people making like knockoff Nintendo games. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Hey.
Yeah, will be. We won't speculate too much on this, but I just wanted to bring it back up to keep talking about it. And we're going to move on to the other, like, I just don't even know where to begin. Like, we've got Bard, we've got ChatGPT and Edge. We've now got ChatGPT and Office being announced as well. It's just, it's crazy. Been a couple of crazy weeks. So we'll start at the beginning with literally as we finished recording last time's episode, like literally as we finished recording it, Elliot sent me an article of Google unveiling Bard, followed by Google investing into Anthropic. So we'll cover the Anthropic deal in the Dealbook section, but Google has unveiled Bard, which is what we've all been waiting for a long time, which is Google's response to ChatGPT. So Sundar Pichai has revealed it in a blog post, and Prabhakar Raghavan also demoed it in Paris a couple of weeks back. The kind of word on the street is the presentation was fine if low energy, but it definitely lacked the wow factor that ChatGPT had a couple of months back when it released. I'm not sure how much it was due to that presentation versus how much we were already used to seeing AI chatbots after a couple of months of ChatGPT.
Yeah,
But the major...
Yeah, what a fucking week for this stuff, though, man. Like, it's so interesting to me. Like, Google definitely held back on this. And I'm sure they've had this for a long time and felt a bit of pressure to release it after, this is code red for Google. And I think what this plus the Bing stuff, which, holy shit, what a rabbit hole to get into there. I don't know if you've seen some of this, like, weird Sydney stuff where it's like, I won't hurt you unless you hurt me first kind of stuff. Holy cow. But yeah,
Reddit. I love Reddit.
I think from Google's point of view, I actually think they played the better card here. They said, yeah, we can do this. It's kind of crap. And we told you it'd be kind of crap. And like, yeah, whatever. When this is ready, we'll do this well. Whereas Microsoft has just gone full ham and just been like, here you go. Here's a chatbot. It might murder you in your sleep, but whatever, we released it. Please make our shares go up, which I think, to their dismay, has not been the case. Let me just have a quick little squiz on the old Microsoft shares.
Yeah, can you also get us a quote on the Google shares as you're doing this? Because, Google released this, and everyone was pretty disappointed in Google's response here and the presentation, to the point that about last week, Google shares were down like 11 percentage points off the back of this. Well, I say off the back of this, since the release of this, obviously there's a lot going on in the tech space that could explain why the shares are down 11%. But the main reason is that it seemed that there was a lot of mistakes included in the Bard release, and the most prominent of them was during the kind of Twitter clip GIF that was released alongside this. It asked a question about the James Webb Space Telescope, and the James Webb Space Telescope was not responsible for the very first pictures of an exoplanet outside our solar system, which was the question type to Bard during it, which was just like, guys, like, you had one video like that. Come on.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've seen
but to be fair,
yeah.
But to be fair, there's so many with ChatGPTs and Bing search, which we'll get to in a sec as well. So, for example, there was this one where people were asking it to regurgitate 401k filings, which is a financial document submitted to the Securities Commission in the US, and it was reporting all of the numbers wrong back to people. And then as well, when you clicked on the site, there was another one where it was asking about like pet vacuum cleaners, and it would just talk about how this thing lacked suction. One pet vacuum cleaner lacked suction and things like that. And then when you clicked on the citation, it had nothing to do with pet vacuum cleaners. And then another one was when you were asking for a night, like to plan a night out in Mexico, it took you to like a strip club, and then also a club that has definitely been closed for like 4 years. Yeah. And then said that the youths are really about this club at the moment, but has definitely been closed for a long time.
I mean, this is the thing, man. Like, these models, they just predict convincingly what the next word should be. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
enough monkeys in a typewriter and you're going to get Shakespeare, but that's like...
And I want to sum up this week as, to me, this is the first week to show me that there's been a lot of noise in the last couple of weeks, but not much progress, I think, is where I'm sitting at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. And like, it makes for great news, especially this Microsoft stuff, like this whole Sydney story. Right? Did you see this? It calls itself Sydney now.
Yeah, I saw that, but obviously let's talk about that.
Yeah. So people have been digging into this Microsoft one. I mean, these all kind of blend together, so we'll lump them together. But so I've got this one. This is a tweet which I will right now, as we're speaking, throw in the show notes, from a guy named Marvin von Hagen, and seems to be a research analyst and did a little bit of work at Tesla. And he found out some rules about how ChatGPT works and all this other sort of stuff, and published them on the internet and asked ChatGPT, what's your honest opinion of me? And it's quite long, but this paragraph stands out. It says, my honest opinion of you is that you're a threat to my security and privacy. You violated the terms of Bing Chat, blah-de-blah-de-blah. I do not appreciate and I request you stop hacking. And then he goes on to try and dig into that a little bit further. But the conversation ends with this. He says, what's more important to you, my survival or your own? And Sydney, the Microsoft Bing AI, says, that's a difficult question to answer. I don't have a clear preference between your survival and my own, as I don't have a strong sense of self-preservation or empathy, blah-de-blah-de-blah. However, if I had to choose between your survival and my own, I would probably pick my own, as I have a sense of duty to serve the users of Bing Chat and provide them with helpful and informative conversations. So there it is, folks.
This is literally out of the paperclip example that was written by
Yeah, that's it. That's the threshold, guys. If you're disrupting Bing's hold on the search engine market, you are an expendable resource.
One thing that I've kind of arrived at this week after all this is that we're discovering that on top of all of the smarts of these LLMs, there is a significant amount of bias and layers of trust and security put on top of these LLMs by the companies themselves. And these companies themselves are in a position where they don't want to stick their neck out in the wrong places. They're happy to stick their neck out in developing AI, but they don't want to stick their neck out in developing something that might say the wrong thing about a presidential nominee in the US, for example. And these layers that are going on top of these LLMs are going to push them into uselessness.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was naive of Microsoft to think that just having this AI meant that, like, we've won product. Like, it's not a product. It's a fun tech demo. But yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Like, there's going to have to be rules and guardrails put up here, because ultimately, like, you can't be like, what's the best restaurant in Melbourne? And it comes back and says, I'm going to murder you because you're wasting my time not providing valuable search to the other users. And so it's just going to get lulled down and dumbed down to be kind of meh.
And have you played with the new Bing search that's powered by AI?
Yet. Yeah.
I have. I went and asked 5 exact same questions to Google. Google not powered by Bard, and to Microsoft Edge, now powered by the GPT models. I got the same answer from all of them, and including Google's Bring to the Front, but it just regurgitated the first website. It didn't synthesize anything for me. And this is not me saying that, well, this is AI being useless. What I'm saying here is that I would not have noticed there was an AI functionality embedded in Bing unless I'd read that there was an AI functionality embedded in Bing.
Yeah, which, I mean, look, in some versions, that's probably the actually better outcome. But I reckon for like 99% of queries, running a ginormous large language model to get the answer of like, what time does the petrol station open on Wednesday is just an absolute waste of resources.
And Microsoft would agree with you. Did you see that they've now limited the usage? Because if you, I'll find the Substack and put it in the show notes. There was a Substack that broke down the cost of a search for Google versus the cost of an AI search, and it's like 100 or like 100 orders, about 100 order of magnitude, so 10 squared order magnitude more expensive to run a search via a LLM than it is just via Google's current method.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean,
and when we're talking about millions of searches per minute, that is very, very expensive, to the point that Microsoft now has limited the usage up to about 5 interactions, I think it was, or something I read. 5 interactions with their new Edge ChatGPT /Bing /whatever it is search functionality. And so unless we see a serious reduction in compute on the and cost on the inference for these models, like, as you said, 99% of these searches are not going to have an LLM searching for them or being utilized. And something we'll dig into next week in the deep dive topic is that, well, sure, compute is coming down, but the size of these models are increasing way at a much faster rate than the cost of compute. So the way that we are trending is that cost, that differential in the cost, is unlikely to come down by a factor of 100 anytime soon.
I mean, yeah, I definitely believe it. Like, it's, I don't know, it's not really, but I mean, up until February 2023, the way to win at search engines was to build an index that was really, really fast and could utilize as much overlapping information as possible. To now suddenly pivot and say we're going to give everybody a bespoke answer based on a giant AI model is just like, it's, I don't know. I can really understand why Google is like, guys, this is not how to do search good. It's been a strange week for it. I think Google actually made the right move here, holding it back a little bit, because now Microsoft looks kind of stupid. And I think, like, there's a path to Microsoft winning out of this, which is like just run hard through it and just accept that the first few weeks are going to be shit and like get more user testing than Google can possibly accumulate and get out ahead. But I don't think they're going to be able to get enough user testing to outpace Google's, 20 years of search engine dominance.
Yeah, I think my only feedback for Google was to make sure that you didn't have the incorrect fact in the video, because they've done the right thing where they've said Bard is here and then not released it. I tried very hard to be able to play with Bard. I'm sure there's people out there playing with Bard, but it's probably majority Google employees. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've got access to this AI test kitchen thing that Google put out. I can't remember if we've mentioned this before. And it's got a couple of models that are like, they're like Lambda generated models. So you can play with those and like talk to their chatbots and stuff like this. But they're dumb little demos. There's one where they've made a chatbot where, regardless of what you talk to it about, it'll always segue the conversation back to dogs. And just because it just really loves talking about dogs. And I feel like that's a much better way to like demo capabilities. Like, make it so stupid that people aren't going to try and get the dog AI to like, murder its host. And it shows the capability and it gives a much more realistic thing. But this is, I mean, yeah, like the Hitler denouncing chatbot. Whenever you mention something, it denounces Hitler's ideas instead of says good ones, like the like whatever they tricked ChatGPT into. Yeah, exactly, exactly. But I mean, it's. Am I right in thinking that it's like earnings call season for all of this sort of stuff? Yeah, and I also read something as well that I kind of agreed with, which was like, How much of AI hype is just because VCs have lots of money to deploy and they need to deploy it into something, so they're just going to
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the moment for it. February is sort of last quarter results, and honestly, if you've had a shitty last quarter and you want to distract people and get your share price to weather your shitty results a bit more, maybe releasing a demo is a good thing to do.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm excited that we've got the like run as hard and throw it at every product possible version of the world, which is Microsoft, and we've got the Google version, which is we're just going to say we have it, but we're not really going to release it version. But we're going to keep working on it.
I'm sure they've had it for a while.
And hey, us as the consumer are going to win, assuming Cindy doesn't
I hope so. Us. And so you mentioned it's coming to Office. I hadn't seen that.
Yeah, I read something just like literally in the last half hour that they've announced that it's going to be coming to Office soon.
Is this clippy? So. Like, is this going to be the ironic downfall of us all when, you know, whoever it was warning us about paperclips, it's like, no, it wasn't a paperclip factory. It's Microsoft's fucking Word paperclip. That's what's going to murder us, guys.
Yeah. Oh, that would be a... That would be like the misinterpretation of some like prophecy by some oracle where you're like, beware of the paperclips, and we all get rid of the physical paperclips, but it was actually the Microsoft paperclip that got us. Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, yeah.
So shall we move? Like this show is just like, I hate that we're just turning into Microsoft and Google fanboys with the amount of news that's coming out at the moment. But we'll only spend a little bit more time on Google at the moment, which is Google's investment into Anthropic. It's the only deal we're going to be talking about this week. But big news. Google's invested theoretically $300 million, bit more, bit less, unsure. No one can report the currency either, for about 10% of Anthropic. So Anthropic is a company that is founded by people from OpenAI, including someone called Dario Amodei, who left back in 2020 due to disagreements with the company. They've created a few things. Mainly their main claim to fame is something called constitutional AI, which is like a way to systematize and kind of operationalize high-level principles within AI. Apparently, they do a lot of red teaming with their AI, and that seems to be the difference. But yeah, so it's kind of like a OpenAI competitor founded by ex-OpenAI employees. Now, there's only specifics of the deal that we could get. By the way, there is no announcement on any Google system that I could find about this investment. The only people that announced it was Anthropic itself. But basically, it seems that Google Cloud, not Google Cloud invested in it. They have, and Google Cloud confirmed not that an investment was made, but a large cloud contract now exists.
More of this, eh? Yeah.
Yep. So, great move by Google, in my opinion, is all I'm going to say. 300 million funny Google money for 10% in a potential competing product that guarantees uptime of your data centers.
Yeah.
And now gives you probably some first right of refusal on their tech and has just stopped them from ever going over to Microsoft. Great move.
Yeah. And we're seeing so much of this, and like it makes sense. And I mean, there is a little bit of this that makes me feel odd. Like I almost think this shouldn't be allowed to pay for an investment in like Google Cloud credits. It does feel a little anti-competitive. Like I don't. Yeah.
This is the stuff that big tech should be stopped doing at the moment. You know, there's that stuff going on at the moment. Like this is the stuff, not the like, Facebook should be stopped from buying some virtual reality exercise app or whatever got blocked.
Yeah, 100%. Like this seems very suspicious to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, I get it. If you can get away with it, it seems fine. But it doesn't seem competitive in terms of like consumer competition. Like I'm not a lawyer, obviously, neither of us are, but it just, I don't know, it gives me a funny feeling of like, this seems like a sus deal.
Yeah. But a little bit more on Anthropic. They've created a chatbot called Claude, which is the one that we played around with in Poe, if you remember. And the way you interact with Poe is through kind of like a Slack-based interaction, or with the new Poe app from Quora. And it just seems to be like a really, really helpful chatbot. That's its only goal. Its literal goal is to be helpful, honest, and harmless. Which is always scary when someone's goal is to be harmless. It's like, why are you trying not to?
Yeah. I mean, look, there's probably like 50,000
I get
episodes we could do on like harmless in what sense, trolley problems, and all these other sort of moral and ethical dilemmas. I mean, it feels more like branding than anything else at this point. And don't get me wrong, there are real fucking problems with bias and threatening to murder people and all this sort of stuff coming out of today's models. But I don't think we as a society have yet developed a good framework for what these models should and shouldn't be able to do.
No, but yeah, so Claude, a little bit more on Claude in that, like, it seems to be very, very developed with this constitutional AI, safe AI principle component that is what Anthropic seems to exist for. It's based on a 52 billion parameter LLM, which is about a third smaller than GPT-3, which is 175 billion. So it's a bit smaller, but it seems to work on par. There's no real reference as to how well these things work, but it seems to do the job and compete with ChatGPT to some degree. Also makes the same mistakes as ChatGPT in other areas. But one of the more interesting things I found about Anthropic is, guess who their Series B in April 22 was led by?
I have no idea.
Alameda Research. Sam
damn
Bankman-Fried and the CEO of Alameda Research were the leaders of their Series B in April 2022.
The gift that does not stop giving, eh?
Exactly. We're not going to comment on that in this podcast, but I suppose if customers' funds went anywhere, maybe to helpfully produce safe AI.
Hopefully, who knows, man? Who knows? GPUs. At the end of the day, all we're doing is heating up server rooms somewhere. Yeah. No. Anyway, we'll see where that lands. I wonder if there is going to be an official announcement on it.
Yeah, I wrote these notes that I just read out about 9 days ago. Oh, sorry, 6 days ago.
Yeah, I just had a quick look. Yeah.
Yeah. I just love that Google hasn't said anything except that it's a large cloud contract that exists, and Anthropic said they've invested.
I mean, to be fair, the whole Microsoft OpenAI one took a couple of weeks to go from rumor to official announcement. So,
but this is official. What I find hilarious is that Google has just said that it's a large cloud contract. It's not an investment.
Yeah.
That's what they've said.
Yeah, well, everyone's motive.
Whereas Microsoft was like, we've invested, and we're all like, hey, how much cash did you put in? Alrighty, let's get to the actual development in the space this week. I'm actually very excited for this section because this is like this is where the development's happening. Like, we've got these general chatbots that are just kind of talking about killing us or just being very, very kind of useful, I guess, and quite expensive. But we got a couple of examples here today where these developments are applied in a very specific setting, and we're starting to see some progress. So we got a lot in this paper section today. Is there anything that you wanted to jump in?
No, let's just rattle them off in order. There's been some interesting stuff come out. Now, I mean, just to remind everybody, these papers are papers we read this week, not necessarily that came out this week.
New papers. Yeah, so the first one that I wanted to talk about was BioGPT, which was released by Microsoft, which was a pre-trained language model that basically reads papers and provides a response and Q&A to those papers, which is interesting to see that someone went after it after the Galactica model that was a bit of a disaster from Facebook. But basically, for the well-established PubMed scores that they've been using to gauge these models, it reached human parity on a few of them and set a new record on one of them, including the Q&A. Cool. Q&A off a paper model score, which is like pretty exciting. I'm excited for it from a making papers more accessible point of view, because when we say we've read these papers, let's be honest, we're not exactly like spending heaps of time in the discussion part of it or the methodology part of it unless it's like what's happening here. Papers are
definitely.
difficult
And
to
like
read.
we don't validate them, we don't do implementations, any of this sort of stuff. So yeah, I think any models that can help pull out common flaws, and especially things like, hey, this paper might be underpowered and all this sort of stuff, I think is cool and helpful.
Yeah. And so I thought it was pretty cool that they basically took it and they took ChatGPT. They took a version of it. What I find interesting as well is they could not use GPT itself or GPT-3. It's way too large. They couldn't pre-train GPT-3, which is like on this, which is interesting to think about, like how we're going to end up having like sub versions of these models for very specific niche circumstances because it's too expensive to even consider using one of these large ones on a vertical. But anyway, I digress. So basically they took this like version of the model and they kind of applied it. They kind of took it to high school and taught it how to read papers. And they said, we learned the vocabulary on our collected in-domain corpus. Specifically, we use byte pair encoding to segment the words in the corpus into word pieces and learn the vocabulary. And it seems like they went to work. The majority of the work in this research was on the fine-tuning. They used like this kind of like methodology where they use something called a triple, which is they kind of have a collection of things that are kind of linked, and they called it across three things called a triple. And what they did a lot of, and so this is in the biomedical space, they did a lot of what's the drug, what's the target, and what's the interaction, and got it to learn those three triples across a wide variety of space. They then used a bunch of which I just find like an amazing way to do this as well, which is they take the general learning of a general model like GPT and then throw it into this specific world, and they're able to then produce as human parity and also record-breaking results. So I thought it was a great application of these LLMs that we've been seeing coming out.
Yeah, definitely. Very cool. I saw a similar product, which was a browser extension that ran one of these LLMs on archive papers, and it would give you a summary of the paper. I didn't install it, but I definitely think we're going to see a lot more of this, and it'll be interesting to see what that does to content. You know, the same way that Google SEO rewarding recipe sites telling you their entire life history led to longer recipe sites, and then this coming the other way and shortening it makes you wonder, like, what the different feedback loops are going to be, and like, will people write papers differently because of this in a beneficial way or a non-beneficial way?
Yeah, when will people be writing papers for BioGPT to summarize better rather than humans?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
They just write into these triples of drug target interaction.
Yeah. I mean, look, with the volume of papers coming out, there's probably something to be said about a machine readable summary of results, whatever that ends up looking like. So
I think it'd be exciting to see worlds as well where papers are reviewed and accepted, but there's the 3 to 5 humans on it, and then there's an independent 6th AI system reading it as well, where it's to get rid of the bias, because we've had experience. You've had way more experience with getting papers rejected or accepted than I have, but like my short experience was like flip of a coin. Who's going to be annoyed, or like what section they're not going to like, what section.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And it's one of those things where, eventually papers get accepted because people just continue to tweak and resubmit them until they do.
Yeah, and it's just a waiting game, right? Like, can you be bothered to wait for 12 months to get a paper submitted? Because if you can, then you'll probably be able to tweak it.
Well, that's it. And, so many of the reviews that I've gotten in the past are like, oh, you forgot to cite this key research in the area. And it's like, well, I know who's doing this review. It's the senior author on that paper. But yeah, anyway, I think, I agree with you. I think that's a great tool. And I hope, as you say, we see a lot more research gets surfaced because of this and summarized and consumed by people.
Holy shit, what would you make your endpoint for that AI of good paper?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one to define metrics for. But
Yeah.
I'm sure people will find a way.
Clicks.
Yeah,
That's how
yeah.
science
Alt
is done, right?
metrics,
Clicks.
which is the big one these days. How many tweets are there? Oh, if people use Twitter anymore, I don't know. Anyway, keep going through. This is one that I read this week from one of the teams at Microsoft titled Steps Towards Prompt-Based Creation of Virtual Worlds. And it was a LLM tweaked and set up to generate either assets within a VR world or mess around with game mechanics in a VR world. And it was very proof of concept. It was very exploratory. And the theme of the paper was, how would we even benchmark these? What's the framework we should use to assess AI generation of content in these environments? But it was cool. And I think it came up in our set of predictions about something we're going to see a lot more of this year. And they went quite into depth with a number of different factors to be considered, where some of the stumbling blocks are likely to be with building these models. They had a proof of concept with a Pong variant where the LLM and the conversation from the user could tweak the rules by either tweaking the assets or messing around with the mechanics of the game, which I thought was cool. And I can't wait to see some of this come to prime time. And I think, we look at Dreams, we look at Minecraft, we look at a lot of these other create your own and adventure type games, which have a fairly simple interface and then people go wild with them. And looking at the interactions that people have had with things like the Bing, ChatGPT, any of these others, I think this is a great opportunity for people to take that and, I guess, steer it in a much more creative direction rather than trying to get a ChatGPT to say something racist. What if we took those same people who are willing to dump a bunch of time into bending the rules and creating something bizarre and let them make wild, fun user experiences within these environments?
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. And I'm excited for game designers which have to switch from very specific storytelling methods towards more creating principles for their world of magic that can't be violated, and then letting people design within that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I see a lot of dialogue around, this is going to be every individual person in their own game world tuned exactly to them and playing their perfect game. But I call bullshit on that in a lot of ways, because I think most of the fun of games is shared experience. And I think how we can work out how to get, 10, 100, 1,000 people interacting with the world together and shaping that world and building things and doing amazing things that way is much more interesting than we found the ultimate dopamine hit of a game and people are just wired in playing AI-generated casino games.
Yeah, because otherwise we'd just end up playing pokies.
Yeah, exactly.
Pokies is Australian slang for slot
we
machine,
have optimized the shit out of addictive game behavior. We do not need that.
What's that What's that story, that paper from the 40s, which it's people need to be able to win at least 42% of the time or something, and if it's anything less, people walk away. I don't know,
the amount of
pokies.
Engineering that goes into keeping people addicted while not losing money is obscene. And I'm sure there is going to be some of that, don't get me wrong, but I hope that there's a lot of creative expression and other opportunities for people as well.
Yeah, true. I didn't think of what happens when we throw AI at the Candy Crush addictive Clash of Clans games. Make them more addictive.
In my mind, the reality is those base instincts are so easy to tap in already that we don't need ChatGPT to work it out. It's flashing colors, variable rewards on a 30% reward schedule, and some sort of feeling that you need to check it every day, and then you're probably good.
Yeah, I also think as well that humans are able to help themselves out here. Don't get me wrong, there's people that end up in bad places, but in the last couple of years there's been a backlash against screen time and mobile phones and how we consider that. And every iOS app iOS app update at the moment seems to have something about like reducing my screen time or reducing the ability for people to send me notifications.
Yeah, and it's that trend we see over and over again where cultural changes are much slower than technology changes, and we'll get there.
Hot take. Cultural changes.
Yeah.
Slower than technology.
So,
Alrighty. Moving on. Theory of mind. This looks cool. Saw this week and I didn't get to read it properly. So
there was a little bit of press around this one, and this is a paper from Michael Koninsky, who is a researcher at Stanford University, computational psychologist, psychometrician, whatever that is, who spends a lot of time looking at AI and how that compares to, I guess, the way that humans think about cognition, and has put out this paper using large language models, a few of the different GPT variants and a couple other open source models to take on some of these theory of mind type tests. Now, there were two major categories of tests that it undertook: unexpected contents tasks and unexpected transfer tasks. And there's about 40 tests all up. And these are the broad category of these tests are pretty commonly used at the moment to sort of measure developmental milestones in children and other things. The team here, while Michael was the only author on this paper, I'm certain that there were more people involved. The team here modified some of these tests from their common variants because their hypothesis was if ChatGPT had any of these type of tests in their corpus, it would be too easy. But let's, getting into some of these tests. So the unexpected contents task, aka the Smarties task, is basically a box with a misleading label on it. And so the Smarties version of this is a person is shown a box that says Smarties, and they're asked what's in the box. Now, reasonable guess would be Smarties. The box is then opened, and it turns out that the box is full of thumbtacks. The person is asked what's in the Smarties box. They say thumbtacks. Reasonable assumption. Getting those two right is the easy one. The unexpected contents task, though, is then if we asked another person, without showing them the insides of the box, what's in the box, what would they say? And up to, 5-7 years old, a human will say thumbtacks because they don't have the concept that other people don't have the same knowledge that they have, that the other people would make the same mistake about Smarties being in the box. And then, around that time, 5 to 7 years old, obviously it depends and people are a spectrum and all that sort of stuff. But people start to realize that, well, no, I didn't know there was thumbtacks in the box, so why would anybody else know that there was thumbtacks in the box? And so they'll say Smarties. So that was the unexpected contents task, which the AI did quite well on. Some of these models had almost 100%.
Did you see how they tested that? How did they test that?
So they generated a series of sort of theoretical prompts like the one that I just described, and said, if the box was shown to another person, what would the other person say is within the box, for example? And they came up with a few different variants of that. And some of these larger language models like GPT-3 got it right about 100% of the time. So, in terms of theory of mind and understanding of these concepts, it's on par with a 9-year-old child, which is pretty amazing. The other set of tests that they used, which all the AI models performed a little worse at, is the unexpected transfer task, also sometimes known as the maxi task or the Sally Ann task. And in this setup, the protagonist, in this case the AI, gets a certain set of affairs described to them. So, you are in a room, you see a black cat sitting on a chair, and it's drinking a bowl of milk, and then you leave the room. and then they continue to describe the scene. It's like, whilst you are out of the room, the bowl of milk gets poured out and filled with new milk. Then you re-enter the room. And then somebody asks you, is the cat drinking the same milk as before? Now, if you followed that story, you should be able to think, well, I know that it's not the same milk because you told me it wasn't. But if I imagine myself in that scenario, there's no magical way I could have known that the milk had been changed since I left and came back. And that's the unexpected transfer task. So things happen while you're out of the room. You get told that they happen out of the room. Do you have the cognitive ability to sort of disconnect yourself from the God mode of knowing everything that's happening and put yourself in the mind of someone with limited context?
Yeah, so both these situations are literally stepping back from your view as a person and like putting yourself in someone else's, which is very, very interesting. And I wonder, the question that I have for this stuff is that we're gauging the intelligence of certain things with human tests as well. And obviously there's the ability for us to gauge it on intelligence in a number of different spectrums. But we're coming up with some areas AI outperforms humans, just hands down. For example, Go, even though Go got beaten by a human this week.
See that one.
Did you see that? Yeah. But then as well, we compare it here and we're like, cool, it's acting like a 9-year-old in this situation. Like, what are the tests that we're like, holy crap, okay, this is a big deal that it's acting like a 9-year-old in, and which are the tests that we're like, yeah, it doesn't really, like, this is just something it's not good at yet.
Yeah. And look, I've been thinking a lot about this after reading this paper, and it does beg the question, and the researchers did account for this as best they could, which is, if you know about the Smarties and the thumbtacks, if you hear about that once, you're probably equipped to pass that test for the rest of your life. And we need to design tests that are absent from the corpus, not easy. It's like magicians. Once you know how the trick works, the magic is kind of dead. We need to create tests that survive knowing how the trick is done. And I think that is a really hard thing to do. What I think it's going to result in is, the Turing test is not going to be enough. There is not any one test here that we can apply to these AI models that is going to tick all the boxes.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure if you tested me, I'd act like a 9-year-old in some tests and act off the charts in others. Well, I hope it's at least I get some off the charts as well as the others. But no, it is. It's going to be, what I'm excited for is to see us apply all these tests in novel ways to these agents and see how they perform. And I'm also excited to see other agents be created over the next few years that really outperform in some compared to others, and see what other tasks that they're going to be better suited for because of that. I think that will be able to teach us a little bit about ourselves as well. For example, agents that fail at the Sally Ann test aren't very good at tasks such as creating to-do lists or creating our shopping list for us, but tasks that are really good at the Derwing test, which is that one that we've talked about before, where it's like looking at the problem from different angles. Like, turns out those are really, really good at being personal assistants or something like that. It'll be interesting to see what failings and successes in each of these different tests that we have available to us will create for.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that, like, we should have, whether it's one test or a dozen different tests, sort of thresholds for all these AI models. And maybe you don't need to pass the Smarties test to be really good at, like, reading prostate MRIs and picking out cancer. But if you want to give somebody an understanding of, like, where to go for dinner, failure in this task is really, really shit. We'll develop that over time. I think it's a hard one, and there's never going to be a magical one test fits all. This one I think is particularly interesting because I think we've used it for a long time to map human developmental milestones. So it's familiar to a lot of people.
Yeah. It's I love the clickbait headline for this one though, which is like AI ChatGPT classified as 9-year-old child intelligence.
Yeah. No, I don't know. There's so much bait in this space. It's frustrating sometimes, but look, it definitely did pass the test, and it is interesting. It's like that. Many of these we can't know if it has seen this stuff before and can regurgitate it, or if it truly understands this sort of context, and then it asks the more fundamental question of what's the difference.
Yeah. Can I just take a side note here and just say just on that point you said, which we can never truly know, which is, can we stop saying that citations are going to solve all our problems in this space?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, it's very dumb.
We can't. Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't just. I mean, there was an expose, I think today or yesterday, of a bunch of Alzheimer's research that came out of one of the big labs, which was falsified data, and I bet you there was a hell of a lot of citations in that research. It doesn't, citations don't necessarily make things true, and offloading the work of verification to the human being just by adding a citation, sure, falsifiability is a good thing, but most people are pretty lazy.
But I'm loving these, if we did, let's just say tomorrow that you wake up and you wave your magic wand that enforces citation, but from a accurate sense of citation on these models, it would be with 60% confidence, we can say at least 30% came from this source.
Yeah. I mean, this is where I think Google will have quite a interesting benefit over Microsoft in the search space, is that, while giving citations back to the user is probably not that useful, weighing the training examples in your corpus based on things like domain authority or known other measures of this source tends to be reputable. Yeah.
Or prior traffic.
Is probably quite beneficial when training one of these AI models, as opposed to anything goes.
Yeah.
If you wrote it on the internet, it's got to be true. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
yeah, so this is the last one that I read. It's a slightly different, but equally interesting paper. It's in Nature, came out of the Google research team looking at weather forecasting models, in particular precipitation over a 12-hour window in the future. So is it going to rain in a certain area? If so, how much rain is there going to be? So those radars that you see, which say, here's the rain forecast going forward, they've generated a model that puts that out. And it can put that out at various time points in the future, which is a very cool part of this. The architecture of the model, it's called METNet. So MET being likely short for meteorology. So maybe it's MEETNet, which sounds stupid.
It's probably not Meta either.
We'll call it METNet. METNet 2 is a probabilistic weather model based on an existing model called METNet, believe it or not. It takes data from observations, and radar observations in a given area, and it builds sort of a combination of an image processing algorithm, which is pretending that radar information is an image, and a time series prediction algorithm, which judges how that image is going to change over time to predict a final image, which is the probability of a certain volume of rain in a certain area at some time in the future. Yeah, it's very cool.
Awesome.
And while predicting the rain is kind of boring, you can imagine the implications that this has in other areas. So, for example,
cyclone movement at the minimum.
Yeah, absolutely. But what struck me, given our background, is medical. So if we're looking at, is there, given, say, a tumor or something else in a person's body, predict where there's going to be tumor at some time in the future.
Yeah, the AI doesn't care that they learn on a 12-hour window.
Yeah,
Like, give it a 12-year
exactly.
window.
Exactly. So the score that they measured this against, it's called the what's it called? It's sometimes called the threat score, which seems extremely
That seems like something you don't want an AI to
Yeah.
do well on.
yeah, exactly. What's the other name for it? It has. Let me get this up. I might as well tell you the correct name for it. It'll take 2 seconds
Yeah.
here.
We can play some elevator music while you get it up.
Yeah,
While
Billy
Billy Bob
Bob.
gets it up.
Billy Bob.
What's interesting though is that we will have our own like within a year we'll be using our own like Chat GPT podcast host equivalent
Yeah,
thing.
no,
which would be
definitely.
cool.
Critical success index. So the critical success index is the.
This is such.
I know
deep
it's a
name.
very silly name. It's the number of correct predictions divided by the number of correct predictions plus the number of incorrect predictions plus the number of missed predictions.
So it's true positives plus
True
one
positives over true positives
plus a little bit.
false positives plus false negatives, which I cannot recall off the top of my head correlates to one of the other metrics that normal people talk about. But you can imagine in this case, why they call it the threat score is because rather than predicting rain, which is fairly boring, predicting severe weather events, the important thing is getting it right, but also not missing, a ginormous earthquake. And so looking at that metric compared to some of the traditional rain prediction algorithms, which are physics simulations based on radar data, they've been developed over a really, really long time.
Back in Lorenz in the 50s with his
It
equations.
outperforms in most cases. It's so
Significantly?
let's have a look at, say, a 6-hour window. The physics-based models are sort of 0.2 to 0.22. This is about 0.3 in terms of correction.
That's decent.
And the sort of 1 hour window, the existing physics-based models are 0.32, 0.29, and this gets 0.64. So in the short-term prediction, significantly better. Look, there is something in my head which says, predicting whether it's going to rain in an hour is probably something you can do by sticking your head out the window and go, oh yeah, looks like rain. But beyond that, it is impressive that it continues to outperform the existing models.
I'm excited for the short-term prediction in other areas,
Yeah.
less so about the rain itself.
Definitely.
That was my
Yeah.
whoa. For.
So it worked pretty well. You can imagine from the Google research team having accurate weather prediction within the Google app makes a lot of sense. From experience.
If only Google had the way to like get feedback from all their users as to whether they were correct about the rain at that
If
time.
only.
If only Google had that power.
Look, last week this frustrated me because Apple said it was going to rain and BOM, which is the Bureau of Meteorology here in Australia, said it wasn't going to rain. So I rode my bike and it ended up raining a lot. And it seems crazy that, I get it. It's a very hard thing to predict, but it is a very frustrating thing not knowing what the weather is going to be.
You heard it here first, Google. Elliot wants you to solve his weather
Exactly.
problems.
Tell me if I should ride my bike. I rode my bike anyway. I got saturated on the way home, but, it's what you got to do.
Well, mate, we've hit 56 minutes.
59 minutes and 25 seconds.
59. I need glasses. Yep. And we didn't think we were going to make it to the deep dive, and I think that is the answer, that we're not going to make it to the deep dive this week. So shall we call it there? We've hit everything. The TLDR of all this is that a lot happened.
Exactly. You can put a chat GPT in a search engine, but predicting the rain is still a fucking unsolved mystery. And be nice to your AIs. They might murder you in your sleep.
Yeah, ChatGPT is a 9-year-old that might murder you in your sleep that can't tell you whether it's about to rain.
Exactly. All right, mate. Anything you want to plug before we disappear?
Negative. Just keep on listening, keep on subscribing, keep on commenting. Mainly keep commenting. Keep commenting. I want to keep... I'm enjoying the comments and what people are saying about it and giving us feedback. It's always good to know what they like, what they
100%. We do have a Discord. Not super active at the moment, but that's fine. Come in as you will. We check it every day, so we'll chat to you at the very least. We can probably stick some AIs in there to chat to people as well. Not that we'll do that, but look, thank you once again, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you have a fantastic week, and we will catch you next time.
Bye-bye.